Hello, this is Rick Morgan with Immaculate Comics. I'd like to reintroduce Barry from comicpresser.com. Hello, Barry.
Hi. Hi,
And
Rick.
we're
Hi,
going to
all.
talk about how to get your own Immaculate 9.9 comic from CGC. And Barry is expert in what CGC requires to get this grade. And there's very few people who are experts in getting this grade, but Barry knows more than anybody that I know. And he's going to walk us through some slides and I'll talk about a little bit things that I would do that maybe not get a 9.9, but head in that same direction. Hi, Barry.
Rick, thanks. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just grateful to be here. I'm a do-it-yourself presser who can't stop doing it. And I learned so much from you and your videos over the years, just trying to suck up every bit of knowledge I could. And I know a lot of people who watch your videos are, looking for insights, tools, of course, techniques, and just and of course they love to share. I mean, they share with you, their successes. Recently, I mean, here we are in late April 2024. There's been the most recent chatter is 9.9s are like possible in older books, and they're going to be more valuable than ever, and they're dangerous to your 9.8 because all of a sudden 9.8 is on top of the heap. So maybe it's either not worth paying a premium for the next one, potentially, or yours are going to be worth less. Who knows? I mean, there have been 9.9s around for a little while. And I'm going to talk about some stats we've picked up from CGC's own content. And then we're going to talk about CGC itself has been put out some recent information, maybe propaganda, who knows, to try to whet the appetite for the difference between a 9.9 and 9.8, which again, up till last week for many people was like, that's the size it could be. And so what I thought I would do, so I approached Rick. Hi, everybody. I'm just letting I approached Rick and I'm like, I think some of your stuff is going to be needed if somebody's trying to turn a lesser book into a 9.9. I don't use all the cool things that you produce, Rick, but I use some of them. And
Sure.
so maybe
Yeah.
we could talk about why now? Why talk about 9.9s now? What are the chances you'll ever get one? What happened? What do you got? What's allowable in a 9.9? What are they looking for, and kind of in what order? And then what are the immaculate set of tools which can't be found anywhere else out there, right? We should talk about it here because you can go
Yeah.
get an eraser somewhere. You can go get
That's
a
true.
press somewhere.
Yeah.
But like there's many other pieces of equipment and tools in the cleaning and pressing world that, you can't find anywhere but Rick, which is why I think he's so valuable and important to the
Oh, thank
community.
you. I will also say that Barry he uses a lot of advanced techniques that even I don't use. I don't even know what they are, honestly, some of them. And he's really good. And he does this a lot. So he really knows what he talks about at the next level, maybe even 2 levels above the regular artisan presser. And I've seen him at work, and his brain is always turning, and he's doing a lot of things. So he knows where he's coming from, and he has a lot of advanced techniques that the average artisan is beyond their reach. And Barry brings that, and you can send your books to him, and he does that.
And yet you can still count
Yes,
the
sir.
9.9s I've been able to get on, maybe one and a half hands. So, we're getting more of them now and it's maybe again because CGC is, I don't know if they're loosening up. Maybe they're more willing to give this grade. Most of our stuff is in brand new books or newer books, as to be expected, perhaps. But yeah, it's not that I'm an expert in 9.9s. I just want to be clear, not at all. But we're getting more 9.8s. And we're trying to learn about 9.9s, and yeah, I'm here to share my knowledge a little bit and get a conversation going with Rick, because a lot of the tools he makes can really help what they're looking for in 9.9 if we can all find the right candidates to get there. Okay, Rick, you want to
Yeah,
transition us into some storytelling?
I sure do. Here is, whoops, adding to stage. There we go.
Oh
So
yeah.
Barry, these are your slides, so I'll let you introduce, and I'll take over as necessary, and you can tell me when you want to go to the next one.
Okay. Well, so what was interesting to me as I was doing research on 9.9s, which has recently come up, I'll provide a timeline up to the present about sort of how I got it. But just the first to set the stage here, there's 9.9s from the 40s on. And so it's hard to see in that old label Zip Comics. That's an old label CGC when things were considered to be very strict back in the earliest of the days of CGC. And this book got a 9.9. It exists. Next is a Silver Age 9.9, then a Bronze Age 9.9, then a Copper Age 9.9, and then modern, ultra modern, near new book. That's
Can I
actually
ask you a question, Ray, with your experience in the market and making these 9.9s? Like, I have two questions. One is, are some 9.8s what we call 9.8s now actually 9.9s if you resubmit them? I know someone's going to ask that question, so I'm asking it preemptively. And then the second question is, what do you think? I know you've done some data on this. I know you have some, at least a guess, the percent difference in value of a 9.8 to a 9.9 is.
Well, I didn't bring any value data today. I did bring some other data like prevalence. How prevalent is a 9.9? How much might you get? So I'll show that in a little bit. But in general, multipliers for a 9.6 to a 9.8 can be anywhere from 3 to 10x of the value, just to go from 9.6 to 9.8. Could it be another 3 times or 10 times? It might. Or if the 9.9 becomes the new one, then what? The best example would be Amazing Spider-Man 300, of which, as of 2022, there were already 10 or 11 9.9s. It has not killed 9.8 values, but other trends, other economic changes have killed 9.8s, and that book has a very high count on the census. It's not really rare. So rarity is what drives the value multiplier, in my understanding. And 9.9s will be rarer for certain books. And then, so even though they set the ceiling, you'll still only be able to get a 9.8 if you're mostly everybody on the planet. So you'll still pay that premium for the highest quality book you can afford, maybe even if it isn't the highest quality book out there. So I think that, again, the elite 9.9 and 10s, if they show up more, they'll command the highest premiums. But I still think that 9.8s are going to get a significant multiplier over 9.6, and a 9.9, if it reflects a similar type of premium, could be 3 to 10 times more than a 9.8, which is quite a bit of money in many, many cases.
That makes sense. And just the last one is I just want your notional sense, because I know you don't know the answer, because I know I don't know it, but people have already asked me and I have no idea. Do you think that there are 9.9s in the wild that are in 9.8 cases that someone resubmitted, they might get a 9.9? Have you seen that at all?
I do. I mean, cracking and resubmitting books for grades, that new grades on the same book happens every day. So yes, I do think there's mistakes and oversights and new points of view. Most importantly, CGC is an evolving institution that changes its point of view, literally, potentially, with glee. Every time they change their point of view, it's a wave of resubmissions they encourage and fees for them. That's their business, generating
they don't have any reason to not change their point of view in that case, right?
Generating expert fees is their business model. I'm not critiquing them. I'm noting it. And so they're going to generate expert fees any way they can, and I would do the same thing. So they have to do it with integrity, they have to do it with consistency, and they have to do it with good communication. And it seems that's what they're doing now. There's more communication about 9.9s, which is why we're having this discussion, why we're seeing stuff out there. They're stoking the flames, if you will. So we together, we need to talk about it. So I do think there are 9.9s trapped in 9.8 cases. I also think they're trapped in Mylars, because people, they know their book's so nice, they literally thought they could only get a 9.8 and they didn't want to send it in. I think there's all types of opportunities out there. I really do.
Well, that's great to hear. I know that most of the information that I know that I've been exposed to about 9.9s has come from CGC themselves. And that's it. That's really my only resource. So we'll learn some more here today.
Well, that's all a 9.9 is. It's whatever CGC says it is. It has to be from them. I mean, a 9.9 is a construct designed and created solely by CGC. There's no 9.9 anywhere else in the world. You could talk about CBCS, but all they're going to do is emulate the CGC point of view. They are not the market leader. And any future market leader, I doubt, would recreate the standard. The standard is, there is a standard. It's published in this book, and not to mention modified or enhanced by comments and commentary from CGC over time, but there already is a standard. And so we're going to talk about it today. So we can keep going, but again, what's a 9.9? We're going to find out. Okay. So here's examples. Let's just start. We're starting with examples. There are examples from every era. So if you want to find gold, sadly, right now, there's still not one concentrated place to look. But if you had to pick a place, if you just wanted the 9.9, regardless of its age, you would be looking at the ultra modern books, the brand new ones. Let's keep going. If you don't mind, let's switch. Okay. So recently, there's been some important 9.9 sales of older books. Older, in this case, is Silver Age. So last year, there was a sale of a 9.9 Iron Man 1. This was on Comic Connect's website, and which is where I got this image from. And I'm not commenting on the sales price here. I'm talking to people about trying to get a book in this grade. It's up to you in the market to decide if that's the value you want. And there's many other YouTube channels and commentary devoted to market value and price and things like that for Rick and his audience in this conversation. Again, I'm talking more about getting the engineering the grade. So this we saw in 2023 one really, I think, appealing, especially for a dark cover. I mean, right? I mean, this has all the hallmarks of super rarity, right? I mean, look how dark and luscious that is without color breaks or ticks or anything that we can see right now. I bet there is a tick though, because you're going to know something, Rick. It's allowed. We're going to talk more about that. You can have you can have a tick. You can't be color breaking, but you can have a spine tick, even in a 9.9. And these are the things we all need to know so we can do better at what we do. We don't have to over-engineer, believe it or not. You can still have that spine tick. And if you can have it in 9.9, you definitely can have it in 9.8. 9.8, you can break color.
You know, I'm not a slab chaser. You know, I like to sniff my books, but even I am kind of salivating at this book right now. I'm kind of looking at it going, wow, that's a really nice book. I'd like to have that. It's hard not to want it.
Yeah, I hear you. And that's fine. We all covet a little bit, you know, in the comics world. All right, let's go to the next one. So that's 2023. Now here we go, 2024, a square bound. Now, actually, square bounds probably should be a little better on the spine, right? You don't quite have the same spine stress and tick issues, which is why I'm not totally surprised now that I see it that a square bound popped up as a 9.9. The giant size X-Men is always a challenge. So it's got a black line that goes down the side. You know, it's hard to get that black line really sharp and on the edge of a perfect right angle. You know, this glued spine can smush and mush and whatever. We'll talk about. I know Rick has put a lot of time and effort in trying to figure out how square bounds can stay super square, and that's really important. We see that square bounds can get a 9.9. Tools and techniques to get that perfect square binding would be very, very useful. This also, coincidentally, is being sold on the Comic Connect website. This book's not been sold yet, so there's no value on this. There's speculation that I've seen.
I'm in, you know this already, but you know that I'm in Germany right now, and I've been looking at comic book stores for back issues, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just go. And there aren't a lot, and the ones that they have are kind of like Donald Ducky things, but I've seen a few books where they have them in a case. I should have bought one or picked one up particular, and they have a Photoshop made something that looks like a CGC label above it, and they've like typed their own store grade in a little. It doesn't say CGC, but it's obviously meant to emulate this.
Well, you're right.
Here, that just tells you the power, the visual power of seeing these labels with these numbers is it's everywhere. It's omnipresent in the entire world. I've seen it everywhere, and even people are faking it, put it on bags to make it look like this, because we all have many of us have an emotional reaction to these when we see it.
Well, what you're talking about, in my opinion, is the power of the IP of CGC.
Sorry,
They have to protect it, right? Yeah, it's the CGC brand, and so so it's their look and feel, their trade dress. So they have to protect it. And there's been recent, issues with CGC and counterfeits, et cetera, not to be commented on here in any depth, but to say that a genuine CGC 9.9, there's no question, all going to be in that label though. The power of that label is undeniable.
Yeah.
And so, and so when you're seeking a 9.9, you're seeking that label, right now. In the future, there could be other companies entering the comic grading space, but for now, it is the CGC label. And anybody's label, it will still be the same thing. The grade and the promise, the integrity of the grading is the key. This is the grade. Now, I've watched other YouTubers assault this particular book. They have said, this isn't a 9.9. Look, there's this problem and that problem. In particular, down in Nightcrawler's area, there's a bump from the staple that's under the paper. We're not going to zoom in or critique it, but there is a bend on the paper, if you will, which is under the staple. And I've watched these people assault it, but guess what? From what I can tell, from what I read, it's allowed. And we're going to keep talking about it, Rick, because we and your viewers are going to get all the way up to speed on what a 9.9 is and what it isn't and how you get one. And we're going to infer what we can still live with in a 9.8, which has never really happened before. Because we thought a 9 is the top. We're like, it's got to be all gone to be a 9.8. It actually doesn't. That's what's cool. Learning about 9.9s lets you be a little looser on your 9.8s. That's relaxes you a little bit. You actually have more confidence in what you're doing if you think you can get a 9.8 and you still see a flaw behind. You think of the sickening feeling in your stomach. Oh my God, I'm going to come in second or third place. You know, again, we have clients, and I don't know about you, Rick, or customers yours, but who look at a 9.6 as like losing.
Yeah,
I got a 9.6. It's failure. No,
I had a guy email me. He'll remain anonymous just today, and he said, "Look, I've got a 9.6, and it's in a slab, and I'm not afraid to break it out and try to get. There's an ink spot on it with a 9.8." And he was asking me, "What do you think my chances are of breaking this thing out and getting a 9.8?" He really wants a 9.8 badly on this book. And I said, "Don't do it, man. Just don't do it." You know, I'm saying it's too much of a risk. I mean, I would probably do it for myself. I have a high risk tolerance, but I don't recommend anyone else try it. But he was wanting that 9.8 and willing to break a 9.6 out.
Well, guess what? Here we go again. You can actually have a little bit of distribution ink on a 9.9. Who knew? Let's keep going.
I did not know.
All right. So go to the next page. So what are we doing? I'm a comicpresser.com. I'm a professional comic book cleaner and presser by day. So what do? I work to try to get books as high a grade as I can, but not take such a risk that the book could lose value while doing it. Though pressing a comic book is risky and books can lose value while you work. Most of the time, the problems have to do with either some kind of structural defect gets enhanced. You know, you have something hanging off the book and it falls off, or you have a problem with structure. The staple was attached and it popped, you know, or you have an issue with aesthetics. You know, there's a mark, a scratch, a scuff, something that, you know, you introduce or is there and can't be removed. But we've been recently, you know, putting everything we can, and I'm showing one of our biggest bumps to date. We turned an 8.5 into a 9.8. Now, this book was mostly structural issues. They had waves. As I understand it, the owner of the book was working hard to remove some foxing, and it caused some distortion in the book. And so this book was pressed by its owner, and they were concerned. That's downgrade. The book was a higher grade than this when they started. They asked if we could get it back, and so we tried to do it, and we did it. We got this book. We thought up till last week was as high as it could go. Now it's not. Turns out 9.9 or higher is as high as it could go. I don't think it's a perfect 10. But actually, could this book be a 9.9? Like, are we leaving $50,000 on the table are we doing our client a disservice by not going for the 9.9? Or have we, if we hand somebody as a professional presser a 9.8, do they have a right to complain? Should they be telling us we didn't do a good enough job, that we put them in second or third place of the future? Like, we worry about this in pressing, right? You know, now I get you a 9.6, I worry about it. If I can't find any other problems, right? If it's a 9.8, you know, but again, it's easy to blame on CGC, but they're not the one you have the direct communication with, and we are. So all I can say is that we are seeing bigger jumps than ever in quality output in our work, because we continue to invest in tools like Rick's and our own techniques and our own tool customizations. And it's a constant game of innovation. But again,
and I know that you have standard repeatable methods that you use, that you have an expectation of the result when you start. So you know what risk you're getting into when you start your process.
we do trust our process. I'll put it that way. We're doing enough stuff to trust that if we follow the process we've been able to tinker with and finesse over the years, then it should give us the best quality book we're capable of producing. But a lot of it is handwork. I mean, I want to be clear, right? It's not, all this work, there's still artistry involved with this, but it's rigor. Check this, check that, check this, check that, check this, check that. And then you're doing whatever the steps are. But a lot of times you just don't go to the nth degree to do it. I'll talk more about how we do that. Let's go to the next one. So, but I want to be clear though, again, getting a 9.8 used to look like the best success in the world. I worry with 9.9s, could it look like an almost not success to the people who are really gaming for the big game? And that's a concern. Here's one. We just got a 9.8 on an X-Men 6. That's extremely hard to do. Obviously, the starting book is the key, right? It was a nice book to begin with. That is a before and after, top and bottom next to this thing. It was raw. It's actually most of the problems with this book was on the back. So tick marks, stacking crease. It was kind of rolled at the spine, things like that. It still had great paper quality. There was light foxing on this. We did remove some very, very light foxing on the edges of this book. And I have an Instagram feed, so you can see my Instagram at the right corner, comic_presser. If you want to see more detailed images of this book or the other books and sort of the before and afters, they're on our Instagram feed. But we've seen greater successes getting to 9.8. Could this book be a 9.9? I don't know if we'll ever know. I think the owner's going to sell this book. I'm not speaking for this person. I'm not suggesting they should, but I do. Once this got this grade, the value was based on the market. Seemed like it. I think in the conversation, it seemed like, hey, I think this is going to fit in an auction X or opportunity Y in the near future. So hope the owner does very, very well with this. We're very pleased to be part of it. But again, getting a Silver Age 9.8 was a feather in our cap. But of course, now with 9.9s and 10s, maybe we're just slackers. And so the question is what is good enough? And that's what 9.9s will do for all the people who aren't worried about what the value is because they don't even have a chance to buy one. They're more concerned with like, did I have one and you couldn't get me there? That's what I'm most interested in, again, as a presser. So we're seeing greater bumps. I'm not saying CGC is looser or anything like that, but CGC makes more money at the highest grades. The more you submit a high grade book to them, or the more they call a book high grade, the more money they make. I'm not questioning their ethics or their integrity, which is the core of their intellectual property and brand. I trust that they're doing the right things, but if they're on a line, they might push it to a higher grade because it's good for everybody. So honestly, maybe they're a little more generous at these grades at this moment because both of these 9.8s I'm showing you came in the month of April 2024. These are brand new grades. Okay. So we're seeing these 9.9s come in. We're seeing these brand new grades on older books at high grade. Maybe now's the time to strike. All right. So what really makes the 9.9? So Rick, if you go to the next slide, we've done some research and CGC's talking about it. So this is the new VP of, it's not a new employee of CGC, but Sean, as I understand it, is the new VP of grading at CGC, as a new title as of the beginning of the year, as I understand it. And they recently created a video that shows how they go through books to determine what is 9.8 and above. And the timing of this video came out in March of 2024, to my understanding. And I got a few screenshots from this video, and this is sort of towards the tail of the video, but these are the money shots. So actually, there were 400 books, anecdotally, in the video he says he went through. In the graphical exhibits, it doesn't quite give you all the data to kind of piece it together. I wish it was a little bit more scientifically presented. But in general, of these 400 books, there's about 160 of them he actually goes through on screen and separates into piles and separates again into piles and separates again into piles, slowly whittling out the riffraff and then putting his candidates together. And what's crazy is this is a box of books sent from a printer. There's literally somebody standing at the end of a printing press and they're printing money. Comic books that are 9.899 right off the press. I don't even know how anybody gets a comic these days. The people who work at the printing company should just be running away with these things. You have the criminal background checks on every printer now. So the point is that when you get these books, now the printers are sending them right to CGC. They're just selling slug books. So he's going through a box of books that came right off a printing press. That's how new these are. So the percentages here are not from just any pile. These are from new books. So I have some data though on older books too. We'll get to that. But in this example, he has 400 books, anecdotally, that he says. And of those, you can see in his bottom picture, he's got 300 plus of those are 9.8. But what matters is 70 or 9.9 and 7 or 10.0. So there's 77 out of 400 books that were above 9.8. That's almost a 20% chance, 19.25% chance of 9.9 above. That's a big number. That's double digit. I mean, you would take an 8% return on your money if you didn't have to do too much. If all you had to do was grab boxes of books off a printing press that you're standing next to and start throwing them to CGC, and then you have a 20% chance of getting these ridiculous things. Well, it's good for the first year, and then it dilutes the market after that. That's why people are alarmed and worried. You know, you start dumping 9.9 copies of the same book out there. It's very alarming to people who have 9.8s. Of course, again, these are very, very new books, but these are thicker covers. They're glossy. They have a dark cover, though, which you can see defects on a little bit more. So this is the first data I can provide, you know, here. That's not, again, not our data. And the CGC's put it out there. I'm just abstracting it from the video to show both visually with the stacks in the upper picture and then quantitatively what kind of chance you have in brand new books. All right. So that's the chance of you'll get it. Let's go to the next slide, which is what it looks like. So these are 3 other screen grabs from the same video. And Rick, maybe you can move your cursor around the corners of the blue books in each one. I don't know if you can manipulate your cursor while we talk. If it's a problem,
I'm doing it. I'm not sure if you can see
it.
it.
Okay, we can't see it. Hey, it's no problem. But yeah, I'm kind of pointing my screen, but essentially the very top box is 9.8, and you can see little white color breaks and bindery tears on those corners. Good news for your current 9.8s. You actually, you might, CGC will tolerate a softer corner in a 9.8. Maybe you didn't know that. Maybe you thought your corners had to be perfect. They don't. Your spine has to be darn near perfect, though. Most of the problems between 9.4 and 9.6 are spine stress. That's where they are. And that's why Rick's such a great champion of the cleaning and pressing cause, because he's done a lot of work. In fact, some of his earliest work is around improving the spine. The spine management is the key to 9.4 and above. But you really don't need the best corners. When you get to 9.9, you still see white on some of the corners. That's what's so crazy. There's still little white bits on those corners.
Yeah, that's
it's
actually
not you get to a 10, and even on the 10, there is still a little hanging shad off the corner of that book. Because
there is a little bit.
Because that's a manufacturing defect, and that's
you and I are old enough to remember what hanging shad is. But I even see like the little tiny. I might be seeing my glasses on little defects along the staples in some of these 9.8s too.
I'm not. There might, maybe it's blurry there, so I can't be sure. But we'll talk. I have some criteria. We'll talk about what's allowed.
Yeah, let's do that.
But here's just a visual comparison. Before we just looked at a quantitative comparison, here's a visual comparison at the corners of brand new books to just give a sense that, but it's encouraging for the 9.8s. That's what I see here, as opposed to, oh, this is why I need to get a 9.9. I don't quite understand that yet with these pictures, but I do understand that 9.8 might have a little bit softer corner than I thought it could live with before. And I'm not even shooting for a 10. The 10 is like, the odds of getting a 10 are so slight that it has to be totally up to CGC. I would not engineer for a 10. Again, I wouldn't engineer for a 9.9, but now I know I can, and there's more data to do it. So it's a little more encouraging. And again, even if I couldn't, I better understand 9.8s, which I think is really important, especially for this audience, which, like me, I'm part of the audience, is people who press and who want to know more about how to get a better result from it. Okay, if you're okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so what are they looking for? This is what they said in the video. So what I did was I went through the CGC video and I just wrote down what they said they were looking for in the order in which they said it, as he made one set of piles and then a second set of piles and then a third set of piles. And this was the order. So for 9.9 on the spine corner, they're looking for, it's not, don't have it. They want it needs to be minimal. Color breaks, white edges, tears, and crunches. Anything that's popped along that spine, anywhere that's not that thickness all the way around, that's a concern for them. On the sharp corners, they want no impact bands. It can't crunch, bang against the box that it was in, have a wave to it, a little bump. That's what they care about. There could be other issues with the corners. Don't know what they are, but that's just all they talked about was impact bands. They said a tight spine. It says 0 defects. That's what he said. But guess what? And I'm going to show it. You're actually allowed to have a slight defect according to this book. So even though he said in the video, 0 defects, you're allowed one. And then on the surface wear, scuffs, indents, bends, and creases. So anything that made that surface less than flat. Now, this is like the core competency of pressing and pressers. So if it's scuffed or damaged, that's going to be hard to deal with. You can't unscuff a book in most cases, but you can buff it. Sometimes it can come out. But then the last part is divots or shadows, and that's the toughest part. Because anything that creates that little illusion of non-flatness, they're raking this thing in the light, and anything that interrupts their eye, they're like, oh, that's a defect. Divots are tough because in pressing, a lot of times you can press a booger or a particle. My biggest crime is hair. Yeah,
I don't have that problem.
One day, Rick and I are going to be Bobbsey twins for the moment, but my hair is slowly coming out over time or whatever. We all lose hair. And so sometimes I'll lose hair, will be whatever, be a hand or something. I'll get a hair. I'll press a hair into a book. It is no fun to press out a hair-shaped crease in a book. That was not there. No fun. But so that's the key for 9.9. On 10s, it's everything. Then it's what we all imagine. Total perfection at the corner, total perfection at the spine, the bend, the break, the crease, nothing. But at 9.9, it's really in this order. First, because their eye's going around the perimeter of the book, and then it's going down the spine, and then it's going across one surface, it's going across another surface. So they're doing it in stages. So, and if you train your eye to do what they were doing, you can probably get through these books faster because they're the pros at looking at thousands of things. So they're going around it first, and then they're going down the spine, and they're going across the front, across the back. And then they're fondling it, raking it, looking at it all as a whole. So there's some satellite view, some helicopter view, and then the microscope view. Now, what I put on this slide, and I'm going to surprise Rick a little bit, is the one product he does not sell in his store that I cannot believe he doesn't sell in his store. I don't think you can live in this business without working under magnification, because that's how you're being judged. And so if today you do not work under magnification, it is the number one productivity enhancer we learned about as we were doing our work. And so first we started with a magnifying glass or a loop, and that's what CGC uses. They use jeweler's loops. God bless them. I need my hands. I can't be holding something up and picking it down. But if you grade cards, like you live by the loop. A loop is more powerful. It can be 10x. These mag glasses go to about 3.5x or 4x, but they're still very useful. They're inexpensive. And so I'm going to ask Rick if he would consider putting a magnifying product or two in his store inventory, or at least a link for his Amazon.
I probably should. I have one of those rings with the light in it that you can pull down like on the spring, but you can't really show it in videos because it doesn't, like the camera doesn't.
That's where we started. We started with a desk lamp that was a magnifying desk lamp. But pulling it down, pulling your head bumps it as you're down looking at comics and stuff. So actually, we found that it's not as practical. With these things, these have their own problems. Are you ready for this, team? Because again, if you want to use these, I don't want you to sabotage yourself. These have like replaceable lenses, which the moment you pick the most powerful lens, which you should, everything else is useless. The lenses, they kind of pop up. They could fall out. I've had this lens fall in a comic and cut a hole in it. So what you do is you buy this mag glass, you put that lens in, and you crazy glue it in, and that's it. You throw the rest of the lenses away. But for the price, which is sometimes these things can be less than $20, they're useful. These things are not permanent. You spend $20 and you use them until something on them breaks and you buy another one. That's what you do. But if you want to wear your magnification, we found that this form factor is among the best for us. So I'm sharing this tip with you and your group. And I think Rick should carry some magnifying products because you just can't do it. It's fundamental. And Rick's all about bringing, again, the convenience of everything you need for cleaning and pressing in one place. We could not clean and press without convenient magnification that we wear, so we can have our hands free and we're not bumping into stuff or anything else. So that's where this anyway. But all these checks that they're doing in the video, this fellow is not wearing magnification. He does have a loop, I think, in the video. So it is important, though, no matter what they show, when they're really doing this, I know they're using magnification. And the older the book, which is what the real hope is for this video, getting Silver Age, early Bronze Age, 9.9s. They absolutely are checking with this magnification, especially around the spine. So it's really, really important that you see what they're going to see and deal with it then. We need to make them giggle or coo or simply move on to the next.
I'll admit something
under
to you
magnification.
I almost did like 4 weeks ago. I had scanned a CGC label and I was going to Photoshop it to read 10.1 and put it in a case. And I was going to tell people on April Fool's Day that I got a 10.1.
Funny.
But then I thought about it and I thought, you know what? People are going to react before they hear me say April Fool's at the end, and it's going to create a whole storm of activity. And I should probably not do that. So I thought better of it. But for a while, the imp in me was going to want to say for April Fool's that I got a 10.1 back.
That's sufficiently mischievous to be acceptable in comics, in my opinion. But so very nice. Okay.
I have too many followers that take me too seriously.
Rick, you are taken seriously, and that's why I'm here. I'm talking. I'm not. This is not like grave, but I'm trying to talk seriously about it because there's real controversy and uncertainty around what this is. But there's a lot of value behind it. As you immediately asked about money, right? See, for me, most of this presentation isn't about the money. It's about the artistry and the craftsmanship. That's what we're about, right? We're about craftsmanship.
You and I think about
we do what you do. We just do it to a level of craftsmanship that we guarantee, and many people who are doing it themselves, they're answerable to themselves. So they can live with whatever they do, or they can't live with it, they hate it, and they invest in another presser, you're a professional or whatever. For us, we're the person you blame if something goes wrong. So we're willing to do that as long as we can, guarantee that we're using a process that's more likely to succeed than fail, of course. And that's what you're hearing now, what you're seeing is our recent research into how we're going to create any type of 9.9 level guarantee. We probably can't right now. I don't know if we ever will, but we do want to create guarantees. Like if you can get a 9.8, we can get you one. And understanding 9.9s, again, better helps us understand 9.8. So that's where this is. Okay. So, but one thing I can guarantee is I can see what graders see the way they see it. And so we should not be blindsided. And we have been. Just to be clear, we're still learning. But we should not be blindsided by a grader seeing something we should have seen but didn't. And magnification is like the table stakes, the base level tool you need to see the world like a grader, especially in older books. Okay. So can you move to the next slide? Okay. So I'm going to set up this one slide here, and then So I actually go back one slide if you don't mind.
Sure.
So see that chunk where it says check for 9.9 at the top? So that chunk, it says spine corner, sharp corners, tight spine surface where divots or shadows. The next slides break those very bullet points up. And now it's kind of one chunk per slide. And now I'm going to kind of turn it over to Rick. I'll comment on it. I just kind of looked at like, what have I seen from Rick and others around dealing with these particular criteria. So each of these slides is that same thing broken up now with some immaculate type products and other type products that I think could help address these issues. So Rick, what are your thoughts?
Exactly. Here? So spine corners, of course, are the corners on the spine. If they're dented, if they're color broken, that's a little harder. But I found that sometimes when things are color broken, if you can straighten them out, that they're less noticeable, I'll say, because sometimes the colors are sort of you can see more of the whiteness, but if you flatten it out, you see less of the color, especially if it's close to white, if it's off-white. Now, so these products here, the tacking iron is a tried and true product that is the staple for getting rid of the spine, anything on the spine at all. The obviously normal pressing takes out what I call the big wavies, but you need extra work on the spine if there are spine defects, and you really have to get a tool on that spine. And the silicone paper, the chamfer boards, I have a thing called a tick attack board that is a narrower chamfer board that is a blunter, rounder corner that gives you normal force back on the underside of the spine. That's in a more natural position, so that you now I've now have 510 videos on YouTube, so you can find it. But you can, and I always make sure I go with the tacking iron at a figure 8. I use this polished brass. I no longer use a steel because this retains the heat. I've noticed that if you take a steel tacking iron, you just wave it in the air. If you leave a thermocouple taped on it, it cools while you're waving it. So the action of you doing this makes it actually cool down a little bit. But the brass has a really high specific heat capacity. It's really smooth and boat-tailed. So I have 1,000 of these things made at once, and then I assemble them, and it works great. It's a great tool. Silicone paper is, and it's just, everybody knows what that is. And then of course the pressing plate.
I put it there because of course you run the iron over the paper.
That's correct.
On top.
You don't run the iron on the book.
Don't touch
the book itself. Right. Exactly. Yeah, you're right. That's a nice family of things, and these are great products, and everyone, of course, knows what aluminum pressing plate is.
Well, actually, go back. So if I just want to add some comments there, Rick. Can you just hop back one slide, please? Where we just, yeah. So, no, I mean to the tools. Yeah. So, yeah, again, Rick knows these so intimately, but there may be some viewers who don't use these all the time or aren't doing it. I just want to be clear, right? Like the aluminum pressing plate distributes heat in a press, in certain kinds of presses. Some presses do not need these plates at all. But if you're using less expensive presses that are not really engineered for dry mounting, they're used for heat transfer. This moves heat around. But the point is that you want a super flat, even press all the way to the corner, all around the book. You want that temperature. And when you don't have even temperature distribution, corners curl. What you don't want is you don't want the corner to curl or flare. And flaring corners cause a problem. Many times corner flares come from drastic temperature change. And so, or humidity entry. There's moisture, and moisture's wicking out of the corner, and it wicks out of the corner differently than it wicks out of the rest of the book. And when it wicks out and it hits cool air, whatever, the corner can flare, and you're stuck with this thing waving up that will hold you at 9.8, much less 9.9, even though it's not here. He didn't talk about corner flare because those are brand new printed books in his video. But the rest, these other three things work together. Rick's chamfer board is an innovation. It has an angled 45-degree edge. You put this edge under the cover, and this edge creates the cover tends to curve anyway around, and the way CGC calls this is tightly hugging the inner pages. That's their language. And so a chamfer board allows the pages curve to hug this board. So now you're hugging something very stiff and thick, not something that's just as soft as the one page after the other. And so when you apply heat through the silicone release paper onto the spine, you're basically pressing, you're supporting it from underneath, and you can often press out wrinkles. And these spine stresses are important. Same thing on the corner. When you have corners that are impacted, you need to press that out. Sometimes you would use what I would call general pressing, which is the aluminum plate and a press. That's general pressure, temperature, humidity. The tacking iron is spot temperature. You put the temperature just where you want it. And so with burnishing, also, which we're going to talk more about, as well as this spot heat, this is how you work a corner, work it. You're molding it and shaping it into the corner you want. And when you're under magnification, you're literally pushing little bits of fibers around. You can get that to be more of like a right angle. And these tools together help both the spine and the corner, but especially the spine. These are spine corners. It's not the corners on the outside of the book. These are the corners at the top and the bottom of the spine. And that's where you need both the chamfer board to hold up the spine, and you need these other things to go generally and more specifically work those corners till they're really, really sharp. So can you believe how meticulously we're talking about these little tiny things? But that's where you're at.
I take it for granted.
It's like you're in the weeds. You with me? It's an in the weeds issue, so that's why I'm just a little in the weeds as we talk.
I got I've taken several of like the IR. I've taken the FLIR photos of different presses, and you can see where the coil is, where it's heating, even at full temperature. You can, if some of them are a circle, some of them are a nest shape. I had a person bring me a like a basketball magazine he had tried to press himself from the 80s now, and you can actually see the trace of the shape of the coil in his press on the book, because you can see it was actually like flatter there and curled around the other sides of it. And I gave him a sheet of aluminum, and it helped immensely. But yeah,
well, right. That's there's no question that there's no substitute for great equipment. And so, but that you can still get into this game and do great things. But no question, if you buy a lower priced piece of equipment, you're making a sacrifice somewhere. And so heat distribution is one of the sacrifices you make when you buy something that otherwise looks like it squashes something flat and makes it hot at the same time on a timer, which to many people is a press and good enough, but not when you're trying to guarantee high quality results consistently. Okay, sorry to have taken you away from your next one.
No, that's okay. And now spine edge, here we go. So the first one's a square bound protector, which a lot of people have found ways around protecting this, but this is obviously my favorite way, is to just kick a piece of plastic that's about 0.5 millimeter to 0.75 millimeter thinner than the book you have. And there are shims that shim that up or down in size that keeps you from squashing it. You can make the square bound fold over if the staples inside are holding it up collapse. You can also force the staples through the front or the back cover if you press too hard. Or if you're very careful and you know how much to press, that won't happen. But if you want the freedom to be able to press really hard and not have that be a danger, then a square bound protector is for you. Now, the one tool I know that I've heard you say you like is this capable staple tool that I have. And so that one helps you to size the staples for reinsertion. It helps you to peel the staples up and to hold them still. It's to me, it's invaluable. I'm not sure I could even work on this, removing and replacing staples with that one. There's a flawless staple remover, which is literally just a regular staple tool that I have had steel punched, and it's actually ground to be thinner than a regular staple tool, and then it's sandblasted. I show a whole video of the entire process. It's coated twice in Xylan, like a Teflon-based material, to prevent scratches. Now, why wouldn't you just use a plastic tool? Because the plastic tool at the thinness that this steel tool is, does not very easily get underneath the staple without actually pushing on the paper. It's very thin. It's only about 1.75 millimeters. And then, of course, the Tic-Tac board, which is like the chamfer board, but it has a cutout in it for getting around the staple so that you can get the spine ticks just to the north and south of the staple on either side.
So I just want to comment. This Rick's staple tools, there's nothing like them in the world. If you got nothing else from Immaculate Comics store, the staple tools are the best in the business. And I would rush out and get these right away if you want to be serious about comics. And you may not say, well, for years I was like, I'm not going to take out a staple. Now I can't live without it. You have to loosen these things to manipulate the rest of the paper. Sometimes if you're too aggressive with whitening techniques, the paper can shrink. It's better to not have it attached to the staples. Other times you need to repair a cover or something. You need to move it. These are indispensable, but they leave no trace. The beauty of the flawless staple remover, it's this coating. It doesn't scratch metal. Super valuable. And this little other tool that Rick, just this custom shape. I mean, there's no shape like it in the world. I mean, this is a totally unique item with each little hole and notch having a function. We don't go into now, but it's important. Now, I do want to bring up something because we're on the spine edge here, okay? Actually, I had another slide, but I see it didn't get included here, related to what CGC allows. I have the CGC book here, which is like the Bible, right? This is what they say should, for each grade, what's going on, and talks about defects. And this is the page on 9.9. And I'm just going to read what it allowed. It says, one small non-color breaking bend in the cover is acceptable. That's going to be that staple lump on the giant size X-Men 1 9.9 that caused controversy a few slides. Also, you can have one non-color breaking spine stress line, one. So if you have a bend and it doesn't break color, it's still allowable, even in 9.9. It can't be garish or ugly or an eyesore, the first thing you see, I'm sure. But if it was still there, right at the staple, for example, because many staple lines, many times the staple has a little line coming off of it, a little fold, stress at the staple. If it doesn't break color, that's still okay. By the way, you can also have, believe it or not, distribution ink on the book, which were sprayed many, many years ago by people who have stacks of comics, and they were dropped at a newsstand and they were sprayed on the side of the comics, and some ink leaked on the edge of the comic. If it doesn't smear and it's not part of it's not missing, and it doesn't transfer to some other part of the book, and it's not distorted, it's okay if it's a tiny, tiny little bit. So there are some defects you can still have in that. And then one other thing I noticed is they're silent on it. In Gemmint, in 10.0, which there's rules for that too. In the 10.0, it says you can't have any writing on the book. But believe it or not, in 9.9, they don't mention on whether you can have a hand marking. And why is that important? Because when you go to the book, to the index of pedigrees in this book, which is a different part, I'm holding it close, they show these very famous pedigrees. They show the writing on them. Most of the most famous comic pedigrees in the world are identified by the writing and scribbles on the comic, which actually provide some provenance and some cool and some historical significance. So believe it or not, you actually, most people are trying to get rid of writing on a comic, but the graders barely care about the writing. They care, but if it's unobtrusive and it's consistent with the time period and it's minimal, it really is almost negligible to the grade. It really is. And so can you get it at 9.9? They're silent on that. And at 10, you can't have any writing. I don't know about 9.8.
Yeah, I've seen some older Spider-Man books that say something like it's an unverified autograph. It'll say something like Stan Lee written on the cover or something like that.
Well, that's not the case. But actually, believe it or not, it says here, God bless CGC, and they love themselves. In a 10.0, you can have a witness signature on it. So they've already provided for that in their signature series program, and maybe more to come because now they've bought a signature authentication company, and they've already announced that's coming to comics. Just got that announcement 4 days ago in the mail. I don't know what it's not ready yet, but it's coming. But my point is that you can get a 10.0 conceptually with somebody else's signature on it, for sure. So they'll tolerate that. So again, there's room to move. There's all this room to move, even though you might have thought there wasn't any even in 9.8. And understanding the rules is how we beat the game, team. That's how we're going to do it. So the last point here is the tick attack board. Rick mentioned it in the last slide. Again, this is a 45-degree angled edge too. It just has a staple notch cut out of it. So you can put this right around a staple. The boards go right up against the staple with the notch cut out. And that way you don't hit the staple, but you get all the little bends around it to try to get those out too. Very, very invaluable tool. Very, very invaluable shape to try to get at stress lines that are right at or around a staple. And while you might not be chasing that for a thick cover book that was printed 3 weeks ago, or if you're really trying to take that Silver Age X-Men 6 I showed you that we pressed from a 9.8 to a 9.9, that's really where you have to go in these older books to try to chase out the very, very last defects if your corners are sharp and your edges are straight and your spine is otherwise, beautiful. Certainly can't.
That notch is exactly 1.2 millimeters wide and exactly 0.49 inches tall, exactly in every single case. Yeah, that is.
Well, I am in nerd heaven. This is amazing. Okay, let's keep going. Let's get. We're almost through here.
Yeah. All right, surface wear, scuffs, indents. Well, we have the Immaculite, which is in combination with Peroxide. If you want, you don't have to, but it helps greatly with speed. You can use the Immaculite, which is. I have 2 frequencies of light now by popular demand, my common 435 nanometer and a 455. Light masks, which I'm now remembering I owe you a light mask that I made for you. I don't think I sent you, Barry. But yeah, the light masks I use are to help prevent color fading of especially reds and oranges and yellows, and especially older books. It's just I just literally drew and then laser cut out the colors that might be sensitive to light, so that you cannot expose them. That helps immensely. Zorian sponge, that one I don't think needs a lot of detail because everybody understands it. It helps pick up loose particles, soil particles from the surface. And Immaculate, which is a surfactant that I made in my garage. I have had to make it 3 times or 4 times now, with a condensing column that has the world's worst HLB, the hydrophile lipophile ratio. So many soaps you want to have either you want to have a wide range. You want them to be able to wash your car and your hair and your laundry, but they don't. And so you want to clean as many things as you can. But this has a very narrow range. It only solubilizes soap that is in the range of the hydrophobicity of what we call sebum, which is oil from your skin. It's targeting that. So oil from your hand and soil, and it is targeted to remove that from a book so that it isn't less likely to remove other items from the surface. That's its whole purpose. I know that some people use it, some people don't, but like it works great on fingerprints because fingerprints are sebum. So that's exactly that material. And it has its uses, it has its limitations, but obviously I like this stuff.
Yeah, so I'm just going to talk about, so first of all, the light stuff. There were no stains talked about in the CGC video. If you have a stain, you're not even thinking about a 9.8, much less a 9.9. But here's the key. When you get to an otherwise perfect book from, let's say, the Silver Age or the Bronze Age, you could have tanning. And you need to get rid of the tanning. And this can do that. And tanning can hold you back. That's number one. Number two, a 9.9 can only have a white page quality or a white to off-white page quality. You can have that. You can't have a totally off-white page quality or anything less than that. But if it's white pages or off-white to white pages, both of those are eligible for 9.9. We do full book lightening, for example, which is not for the faint of heart. And this tool, this particular kit may or may not be ideal for such a thing. But what I'm saying is that many times you need to lighten all of the pages to guarantee a Silver Age book is going to get into that space. And so you could, though, more engineering is possible. And so the lighting can change page quality. And that's important to getting a 9.9 especially on older books. When it comes to the Absarine sponge, it is a classic removal tool for many different types of marks. However, it is considered an abrasive tool on certain types of books, especially very high gloss books. You don't want to use this because it will put on a streak that will leave a little bit of rubber behind, and it will completely mar the gloss. So it's not useful for that in all cases. But for matte colored books that are flat and dull finished, the Absarine sponge can help disguise markings on the dull varnished books and actually help create a less interrupted surface, which is really what these graders are looking for, a surface that is uniform in its presentation. Obviously, they have 400 other books next to it. They'll know something's not quite right, but they're not going to have 400 X-Men 6s looking for the 9.9. And so that's where there's more opportunity when there's not one to just hold next to. That's really, really important when you're trying to win with just one book in front of just one person at just one moment. And those opportunities, again, may continue to grow over time. Finally, with a MacuClean, we don't use it a lot, but we love it for fingerprints. Most importantly, we don't use it on older books, but on brand new books with varnishes and coatings, there's not such a danger that you could have color loss or in the same way, or that it will soak through in an uncontrollable manner or whatever. Leave streaks, though. Again, streaks are really often under the control of the user, not the control of the material. So, but these are just some of the things. There's many, many other tricks, techniques, materials that are used to control what the surface looks like, how it manages light, how, of course, bends and creases get out. But in general, the wear of the surface can be engineered. It can be brightened, it can be smoothed, and it can be polished and buffed. And that's what I think these types of tools from Immaculate and others show. Rick, I think we have one more wonderful grouping here.
Yeah. So this is your cheaper, less expensive press, and this is about a $240 or $50 item, I believe. And this is the hand steamer that I use, which is called Pure Steam. I like this one a lot, mostly because it has a broad venturi with small holes in it. So it's in an angle. The holes come up at an angle such that it's less likely to spit on the comic books. I know that you have more professional tools than these. The Macu ball, which is literally just a stainless steel ball. The only innovation is that I have a holder for it that I use as a handle so that it's easier to drive the ball around for taking out fine marks on a book. And usually with the chamfer board underneath it, you can drive it around in a irregular pattern, like a figure eight, so that you can help alleviate those in a way that a normal pressing wouldn't give. I do it before normal pressing so that the book is more supple there. And then cold pressing boards, which are literally just thick pieces of lucite. They're really heavy, thick pieces of lucite. And after I press a board, I always cold press a board so that we don't have what we call in the business, they call reversion, which is the returning of the pressed out defects after some amount of time, which there isn't really an exact science to how long till you see reversion, but more than one person has sent books in the CGC and seen a defect that they've removed. Returning cold pressing is one of the most popular ways to return that. You just put it, it doesn't have to be a clear lucite block, but it's nice to be able to see the book underneath it. And actually, I like the trick of picking the book up with my finger to see if anything is returning right away, just to lift it up and I can see through it, so I can just put it back down. Also, I like the fact that I can stack lots of these on top of each other in one space. And I like them. So,
Well, cool. Yeah, cool and useful, and you're not going to find that in a lot of other places. You make your own, I guess.
yes.
What I would say is, the press actually, if you're not careful, is the one putting the divots and the shadows into your book. So
Yeah.
you do need to be careful when you're pressing, and you may need to do it more than once. So one thing we've learned over time is you press it till it's done. You don't press it because you don't press it and say the book's pressed. The next thing is that steam or moisture is key to softening the fibers in the book so that they lay down under pressure and temperature. And by the way, it is not pressure that makes the book flat. It is the change in temperature. It is the delta T. It is that changing temperature
You're making me happy.
that causes the book to contract and expand and tighten up under pressure. The pressure is not making the paper flat. It's making the
I
flat.
always say it doesn't get any flatter than flat when you press it, when it's under pressure.
But flat is relative because paper is a fibrous matrix. If you looked at paper under a microscope, it actually has thickness. It is not, and I'm saying even the thinnest paper still has thickness, and the thickness is irregular. When you get down under a microscope, it's really not flat. It is a bunch of threads and strands that are squashed, and there's still a thickness. It's not regular. And that's why stuff sticks to your book. That's why dirt gets in the paper, not on the paper. It's embedded between these fibers. The steam, it's like you wash your clothes, I guess, but what you're really doing is you're softening the fibers. So when they contract and cool, they're more likely to be flat because they stretch and they contract uniformly. And so under pressure, they're more likely to have that finish from the flat surface above it. The AccuBall is a burnishing tool. There are many burnishing tools. I'm not going to say I burnish like Rick. I can only tell you that it is like a paintbrush. I don't paint like Rick either. I don't draw like Rick. Okay. We can both buy the same brush. We're not going to make the same pictures. And I assure you that when you get these burnishing tools, you can do lots of different things with them. But the key to getting out a lot of these small divots or shadows is to burnish them by hand first, oftentimes on a slightly moist surface of the paper, and then press that sort of hand manipulated area down. So first you mix up the fibers by pressing on them and slightly moist, and then you press that, and then it becomes a new matrix, if you will. Squash that matrix, and you erase, if you will, some of the other dents and bends that used to be there. The cold pressing board is the key to making sure that the cooling is happening consistently over time. It is difficult to keep something in a press for a long period of time and press something else if you don't have a lot of presses or a lot of time. I don't have either. So what I do is I make sure that when I do pull stuff out, I cold press it enough so that, again, it doesn't revert. As Rick said, the stuff doesn't come back, but it might still be cooling. Just because the press seems cool to the touch or whatever, that book can still be cooling. And so just to be sure, I let it sit under there. But especially I could let it sit under there for weeks, What that doesn't matter. What matters is that the moment you pull it out of the last pressing stage, you get that to CGC and get it graded as fast as possible. And so if you really want the 9.9, you pay a little more for it, which CGC knows, because you don't want that to change over time. So anyway, we've talked about, I think this is the last major chunk of stuff that's in the 9.9 criteria. So yeah, anyway, if you this is kind of my wrap up slide, Rick. I know we've been talking for about an hour, so I think this is
Yeah.
a really good segue here, but the 9.8 might not look so good to somebody in the future. It might, if hopefully there's not too many of them, but it's for the newest of the books. The 9.9 is probably going to be the grade you need to get. And people, who see 9.9s is the next big deal. Maybe 9.8s are going to be, more of a deal, more of a steal. But people are no question going to keep looking for them. There's no question CGC is more interested in talking about them. And there's no question that they're attainable. And with better technology, better tools, and better techniques, there's more opportunity to do it. And of course, with more professionals, my interest here is in the marketplace. Maybe that's the one book we could get to press for somebody who's otherwise pressing all their own books. It's that 199 candidate that maybe they want to get a professional to help them with. So anyway, I love Rick's products. Rick and I have been friends for a long time. I've been a great supporter of his genius.
He is. And I got to tell you, if you don't know Barry, you should know Barry because he's present on social media at comicpresser.com. And he maybe doesn't have my same effervescent personality, but he's a consummate professional, and he's very good at what he does, and he's trained himself, and he's listened, and he's open dialogue and answered questions, and he knows what he's doing, folks. You should really listen to him. And by the way, I really want this Amazing Spider-Man. Is that 35? I think I recognize this.
That is 35.
I really want it now that I know there's a 9.9. I'm a victim of like everybody else. I really want this book. I'm weak.
I'll let my customer know. Again, not my book, but we were lucky to press it and to encounter it. But yeah, anyway, I'm a big fan of what Rick's been able to do for the pressing community. I've learned a lot from his videos. I certainly don't have the effervescent personality. That's why I lock myself away with comic books a lot of the day. But I certainly love to have a success, and I love to have a success that makes other people want to talk about it. And I hope you all can enjoy some success, not just with your own pressing, not just with Rick's tools, but getting those elusive 9.9s now that we know they're possible, maybe more than ever. And perhaps even one day, that silver age or that bronze age 9.9 to completely
maybe next year you'll get a
that.
10.1 on April Fool's Day, right?
And a 10.1 on April Fool's Day. Rick, thank you so much for letting me walk through this with you and your audience, and I really appreciate our time together.
Thanks, Barry. Love you, brother. Take care.
All right, man. Peace out.
All right, bye.